7:35 on this Tuesday. I want to get right to our second guest here, Phil Kerpen, President of American Commitment. Sir, good morning. It's always good to have you on the show.
Yeah, good morning, Dale. Sorry I missed the other day when I was supposed to call in, but it's great to be with you as always.
Oh, it's always good to hear from you. And for folks that don't know, occasionally you see the Phil Kerpen column in our local newspaper, the Baxter Bulletin. You get to see your column ever so often. So how you been?
I'm doing great. The baby's almost 3 months old, and
wow,
things are good here.
Things are good. What do you got for us today? I'm looking at your website, American Commitment, and one thing I'm seeing here is Stop Obama's Internet Takeover. You've got many issues on your website here. And
yeah, we're working on a lot of things, Dale, but if I could just pick one to talk about today, it's the importance of keeping the spending caps. Federal spending was totally uncontrolled for years, and it reached a historic high in the first year that Obama was in office. And we had a really historic election in 2010 where the spending issue actually mattered, which is rare. Historically, it hasn't been a big issue the way taxes have been, but the spending issue really mattered. And we got something done on it. The Budget Control Act actually capped discretionary spending, and we've seen spending as a percent of the economy fall from over 24% at the Obama peak with the stimulus and so forth to less than 20.5, and so we're basically in line with historical norms for federal spending. And we've got a president right now who has said that he will veto the funding bill for the federal government unless it breaks the spending caps, violates the agreement that he himself signed, and spends an additional $37 billion on domestic discretionary spending, on non-defense discretionary spending. Now, I don't believe him. I think he's bluffing. I don't think he would ever shut down the government because all his buddies work for it. And I hope that Republicans get that and they say, you know what, we don't believe your threat. We're going to go ahead and keep the caps. But there's real danger right now, and this is going to play out over the next couple of weeks.
Here's what I'm hearing in our part of the country. Of course, I'm in north central Arkansas, and I travel into Missouri and Kentucky and Tennessee, and a lot of people are frustrated even with the Republicans right now in Mitch McConnell and John Boehner in their leadership, and what we should say, the lack of leadership. Have you talked about any of this at all with their leadership?
Well, look, they're in a challenging situation because the Democrats stick together and Republicans tend to disagree on strategy, and that makes it tough. Look at what just happened on this Iran vote, for instance. They were able to hold together a filibuster despite the fact that basically all of the top Democrats, the ones who actually understood the issue, they were against the president, but the White House was still able to hold together enough Democrats to block that from even coming up for a vote. And I think it's similar on these spending issues where you get Republicans splintered on strategy. Some of them think we ought to go to the floor over Planned Parenthood, for instance. Others think that plays into the president's hand. But regardless, you got a handful of other issues in play also. But the impact is if Republicans disagree among themselves on a strategy and the Democrats are all on the same page, and Democrats are going to end up getting what they want, even though we have a Republican House and Senate.
Unbelievable. It's do you ever just get so frustrated you wish you could just jump off the edge of the earth?
Well, not quite that bad, Dale, but it is very frustrating at times. I mean, I'll tell you, Washington,
you're right there on Main Street, D.C. I mean, come on,
Yeah, look, it's very, Democrats are better at politics than Republicans, let's be honest, and they have been for a long time. And, the Republicans are at a disadvantage because Republicans really believe in things, and they put principles ahead of practical political considerations sometimes, and they get crosswise with each other. And, Democrats are very sort of bare-knuckled. They're going to do what it takes to win in any sort of tactical situation, and, Democrats don't have a lot of assets right now. They have the White House, and that's a big one. Mm-hmm. And they've got the ability to sustain a filibuster in the Senate, and they're using those two things to, get the outcomes they want, despite the fact we have Republican majorities in the House and Senate. And that's, believe me, nobody's more frustrated about that than John Boehner and Mitch McConnell. And, of course, if they could figure out a better strategy and get everyone on the same page, I think they would. But they have a very difficult job, and they haven't been able to do it yet.
Well, I want to get your opinion. This changes subject real quick. I don't want to throw you a curveball, but this nuclear agreement with Iran, my senator, one of my two senators is Senator Tom Cotton, and I've talked with him and Senator Bozeman, when they're in Arkansas, when we can catch up, but otherwise it's by telephone. But Senator Tom Cotton, and you've probably seen the video of him drilling Secretary of State John Kerry over that secondary agreement that nobody ever read. And even the Secretary said, no, I think we had a briefing on that, but he has not read. And finally, Senator Cotton interrupted and said, have you seen a Kindle, a laptop page, an iPad page, a printed page, any form of this document that was not presented to Congress? Have you not read the facts in here? And he says, no, we have not. In fact, there was two people, I forget who the second gentleman was, but Secretary of State John Kerry was one of them and had not read the secondary agreement that Tom Cotton had found out about when he traveled to the Middle East.
Yeah, Dale, now we're a little bit outside my area of expertise, but I have been following this pretty closely just as a concerned citizen, even though it's not the kind of issue we work on. We focus more on economics. And I got to tell you, my understanding is that the U.S. could call for this side agreement anytime we want, and the IAEA would have to give it to us as a member of the IAEA. And what the administration is doing is they're intentionally refusing. They don't want to turn it over to Congress.
What reason is that? I mean, why would they?
Well, because this is the agreement, according to the Associated Press, that allows Iran to inspect its own nuclear facility.
Yeah, but
and if they sent that to Congress, well, that would hurt their case, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Well, what are the economics of this? Being that you're basically in economics for the country, what's going to happen when we excuse the sanctions and Iran is able to sell oil and use that money? Would they use that money to violate the agreement? What's your thoughts on it?
I think a lot of it's going to flow into their proxies in the region, which is going to further destabilize the region. A lot's going to flow to terrorist organizations.
Yeah.
Look, $100 billion plus, you see the administration say, well, they're going to spend most of it on boosting their domestic economy. That could be true. But even if they spend 80 or 90% of it on boosting their domestic economy, you still got $10 or $20 billion that's going to flow to, proxy wars and terrorist organizations. That's an extraordinary amount of money. And that's actually, from the opinion polling I've seen, that's the number one objection the American people have to this Iran deal, is that we should not be funding the world's number one state supporter of terrorism.
No, you're right on. One thing, we're starting to run close on time, and I know you've got a tight schedule. I wanted to ask you about the RAINS Act. You posted this on August 3rd of this month. Can you explain the RAINS Act for us?
Yeah, this is really important legislation.
It is, very important.
This is a bill that would say that agencies like the EPA and the FCC and the IRS and so forth, they shouldn't be able to essentially write their own laws and publish regulations and have them directly take effect. If the RAINS Act were passed, they would only be able to propose new regulations, and they'd have to send them up to Congress for a vote, and they would have to be approved by the House and Senate and signed by the President before they took effect. And, the Congress is certainly capable of passing bad things, but, at least if Congress has to vote on it, you know who's responsible. You can hold them accountable come election time. The way it is right now, where the bureaucrats can run the show without our elected officials ever voting on it, has been a huge disaster in my judgment. And so we're big supporters of this bill. It passed the House. We've never been able to get a vote in the Senate, but I hope with Mitch McConnell running the place now, we'll finally be able to get a vote in the Senate. And Dale, we've been surveying the Republican presidential candidates to try to find out if they would sign this bill, which I think is one of the most important things we can do in the next Republican administration. And we've got 10 of them so far on the record saying they would sign it, and all of those statements are on the website.
Well, what we're hearing of course, being in the Midwest and the South, it's like we deal with the EPA, and you know what's going on with the carbon emissions, and we've got the big the power plant down in Hope, Arkansas, that's supposed to be 100% efficient that the EPA is still battling. We've got farmers that have to deal with the EPA. If it rains, they have to take samples of their soil to make sure that the fertilizer didn't get in the White River, the Buffalo River, or the Spring. It's just hammering our agriculture people all the time. We don't need the EPA writing their own laws.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, on top of that, they're now one of the worst environmental crime syndicates in the world. They just poisoned the Animas River in Colorado with 3 million gallons of toxic sludge. And by the way, Dale, this has not been widely reported, but the only way they even got on the property of the guy who owned that abandoned mine is they threatened to fine him $35,000 a day if they didn't let him on their property after he said, I don't want you here because you're going to increase pollution.
And look what they did.
Yep, they sure did.
Has that ever been cleaned up? What's final analysis? I've not heard.
Well, they're still dealing with it. It's they're claiming the levels are trending back to normal, but they're going to be dealing with it there for a long time, and that's just a tremendous release. If anyone in the private sector did that, they'd be out of business. And the EPA just keeps trucking, and in fact, the cleanup costs there could rise into the billions. And who's going to pay for that? You and I and every other taxpayer.
Yeah, it's it's one thing after the other, and I've dealt with some gentlemen, trying to think, I believe the Slayton Stewart has plants need CO2. Looking at your EPA's carbon dioxide endangerment finding, we exhale carbon dioxide, and some findings that I've had with some people on the air talk about that the Earth is 40% greener as it was 45 years ago.
Well, the craziest thing about the greenhouse gas rules, Dale, is they're going to drive up the price of electricity all over the country, 20, 30, 40% or more. And their own UN climate models, if you believe, their guys, not the skeptics, they say it's going to reduce, it's going to avert 0.018 degrees of global warming by the year 2100, 18 one-thousandths of a degree. And we're supposed to impoverish ourselves for that. It's insane. That's one of the craziest regulations I've ever seen.
And I know you got to go. It's already 46 after the hour. Real quick, if global warming was such an issue, do you know that every American-made vehicle since about 1985 runs at 195 degrees as its coolest operating temperature? And my question for the global warming people, if you've got 200 million cars out running around in any given day, why is the temperature outside 58 degrees? Because a lot of this exhaust runs 600 to 1,200 degrees, heat rises, and if we've got that blanket of insulation, why are automobiles not heating that atmosphere? Is that a legitimate question?
I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you that whether it is or not is not something in the current climate models, and they've got a lot of holes in there.
Yeah, true. Phil Kerpen, president of American Commitment. I know your time is short today, but we always look forward to having you on the show, and we need to get together again sometime.
Absolutely. AmericanCommitment.org is the website for all these issues.
Phil Kerpen, thanks so much for being here.
All right, bye.